Yeah, hi, good morning. It's warm welcome in the Saturday morning. Thank you for joining me for this training event. Okay, what we're going to do is today going to talk about overview about Kerio Control and what are the technical requirements are required to start Kerio. And we'll be doing installation of that particular product in a virtual environment. And then we are going to do the basic configuration, and I'm going to show you the actual configuration of live stereo control firewall of NG500. My name is Kumaresan. I'm basically a technical consultant for Velarus. I work on Kerio Control for last 15 years. When the product was started as an application in Windows and moved into a software appliance and then the virtual appliance and the hardware. So I saw through the journey which the Kerio Control evolved from a application to appliance. Here are my credentials. You have my email address and my mobile numbers. You can reach me directly if anything is required. Quickly, I'll give you an overview. This is a Kerio Control is a solution for businesses. We're going to talk about key features of Kerio Control. We're going to talk about common technologies and terminologies in computer networking security. And we also look at how we can implement in the business network. And we will talk about licensing and a bit of pricing overview over here. These are the three models that we have in Kerio Control hardware. In India, I think people prefer to have a hardware model rather a software appliance. But at the same time, the virtual environment is raising day by day. So our Kerio Control as a firewall can be deployed on all the three platforms: hardware, software, and virtual environment, including Hyper-V and VMware, or any virtualization which supports. Now, in the left-hand side, which you see the smaller device, which is NG100. Right-hand side, you have at 4 ports, it's NG300. And the below, which is a rack mountable, which is NG500. Now, the number of users supports when we talk about NG100 can support up to 100 devices, provided the maximum bandwidth controlling will be around 300 Mbps. NG300 can support up to 500 Mbps of bandwidth management, and NG500 it's around 1 Gbps of throughput per port. Now, about Kerio Control, it's a complete UTM, Unified Threat Management Solution. It can bring comprehensive network protection, including your devices, internet, security, content, and the data transfers. It's ideal for businesses and enterprises, which can give you a secure and reliable internet connectivity to your end users. It has advanced scanning technologies like deep packet inspection, as well as port scanning. And this can, communications are thoroughly inspected and evaluated before passing through the end users. Kerio Control has intrusion detection and prevention system, content filtering, as well as application awareness, antivirus, bandwidth management, and etc. We'll quickly move on to this. Now, when I'm talking about benefits, yes, we're going to take a benefit about the latest technologies available in the market today. Kerio Control applications are various, it depends on the deployment, where we can deploy that in DMZ zones, we can secure our own data centers, secure our servers, provide secure internet connectivity or access to our employees, monitoring them, managing them. You can, reserve, or you can reduce the transfer rate based on a protocol, and it supports both IPv6 and v4, and it can adapt to any virtual network environment, both in terms of physical as well as virtual. Now, we can also organize the reports, and the reports can be emailed to the specified email address, and we can remotely access the firewall and manage it. And we do provide a cloud interface where you can able to manage multiple firewalls. Most of us today, we are the partners who is joined with us today, and all the partners can able to manage their customer firewalls directly from a one single interface without even knowing the password of the end users. I know you might be having a lot of questions. You have a chat panel. You guys can able to put the questions. Maybe I'll answer it as soon as I complete all the slides and the installation. Talking about passwords, yes, that to provided customer gives you permission. If customer denies permission, you cannot log into the firewall even by using a cloud option. Firewall logs all the activities of the system. It can generate a mail or alerts based on a weekly, monthly, yearly reports or on demand. For example, if you want to have an alert specifying a specific virus entered into a network, you need an alert. Yes, this can able to give you. Even if someone is trying to create a remote desktop connections from your network to other network, it can able to shoot a mail to you. We can able to granularly control Kerio Control up to that extent. Now, stay protective. We can connect to a corporate network while you are outside office by using VPN. When we talk about VPN, it's again a different scenario, site to site, site to client, as well as site to mobile. We support Android and Apple iOS. And we can connect VPN through Kerio VPN as well as standard IPsec VPN. Now, easy configurations. Again, I've discussed about Kerio Control hardware. It's a quickly deployable hardware appliances, again, cloud enabled. You just need to give a hardware ID, send the device to your customer place, specify the hardware ID, and you can start configuring from your own office. You don't even visit a customer location to deploy a firewall. Now, we do have a software appliance, which means there are basic system requirements. I'll share it in the next few slides. And remaining, I've already informed, like cloud services and the notification to delivery to devices. When talk about delivery to devices, it can be a Apple iWatch, it can be a Android or iPhone. For example, if any internet connectivity goes down, yes, the system can able to notify you on Apple Watch or maybe an Android phone or Apple iPhone instantly. Now, talking about key features, there are a lot of features there in the product, so I'm not going to touch base everything. Quickly move on to a few points. Number one, it's a central management. The left-hand side, what you see is the actual screen, a dashboard of the Kerio Control as a firewall. It continuously monitors all the firewalls, we being a centrally monitored system. It can send an email notification, push notification to devices. And the good part is you can create a shared policies among all the devices. Let's say, for example, where I can use it. If one of your customer has multiple branches, they have 5 different firewalls deployed in 5 different locations, but do you want to have a similar policy deployed to be deployed on all the firewalls, then you can create a shared policies. And local web administration also available. It doesn't mean that once the firewall is connected to a cloud, you cannot have a local. That is also possible. And we provide API for your integrations. If you want to do that, if you're good enough on programming, you can do that as well. Kerio Control gets updated automatically, provided that you enable that option. We can set up a certain time. It automatically downloads, upgrades. You don't have to do this process manually. Yes, the good part is we have a high availability, which means we work on an active passive environment. You can deploy with 2 firewalls with the same model or same configuration. We can do that. This is a new feature. VPN, we discussed it. This is a tunnels can be created by using a same boxes, Kerio to Kerio or Kerio to any firewall which supports IPsec VPN. So we give a cheaper IKE version 2 and version 1. So even if you want to configure with the other security appliances, you can create a VPN. And you can have a secure sharing of those resources as well. Content filter is the one good part we have, and the content filters and traffic rules can be utilized on all the QoS platforms. What you see right now is Kerio content filter based on categorization of websites. We have antivirus inbuilt into it, which can able to scan email and all other traffics as well. And we have a safe web. For example, you deploy this on a educational or government organization, even in your corporate environment, by enabling a safe web and as a feature, you will not get any adult content or any content which is not required for end users. That also can be enabled. Application filtering, it's available. For example, you have a WhatsApp, you want to allow only WhatsApp audio or maybe WhatsApp text. You don't want to allow the end user to have a WhatsApp call. We can block that. That's an example which I'm giving you, and we can able to see a real-time application usage by the individual users. You can able to set up policies and restrict access to applications. Now, network security, if I talk about, we have different kind of security, starting from geo-filtering, which means if a customer is in India, he's not going to get visitors from outside India to the network, which means I can put a geo-fencing. We have a zero configuration networking, which means if the customer has multiple branches, even though they have a different set of computers, different network, they can be visible in as a single network. That is also possible. By providing IPv6, we have a MAC filtering on individual interfaces, so we can restrict which device and where it should work. For example, if a laptop has wired LAN and the wireless LAN, you can configure, if that is in a corporate wired LAN, they will have a different set of features, it is allowed. If the laptop is connected to Wi-Fi, it is not allowed. So we can do that as well. Quality of services, it's technically a bandwidth management kind of an option where you can manage on both limit or reserve bandwidths. Limit reserve means guaranteed, and the maximum bandwidth can be given to any individual IP addresses, a group of IP addresses, or it can be a group of users, or maybe for the same user we can able to manage the bandwidth based on protocols, timing, or maybe even for the content. For example, customer can able to use all the applications nicely, but when you open the YouTube, they cannot have a good bandwidth. Or maybe they can open up YouTube itself very quickly, but the video streaming is not going to work. So that's how we can able to limit, we can set bandwidth rules. On the top of it, we can do that with time limits. Now, VPN, we discussed it, and we talked about Wi-Fi. All the hardware devices, it comes with integrated Wi-Fi wireless hotspots. All. I mean, except NG500, which means you can set up to 8 different wireless networks, including guest networks. It supports 802.11 AC standard. So you get a high bandwidth on your wireless devices. Now, let's move on to the next slide. Implementation overview. These are the system requirements for deploying Kerio Firewall. If you're deploying this as a software appliances means you can use any of your old or maybe a new hardware which existing in the customer places. You can deploy a firewall, which means megahertz, 2 GB of RAM, minimum of 8 GB of storage. See, what I say is 8 GB, but Kerio Control firewall can even run in 2 GB. That 8 GB is we keep it for logs and statistics, nothing else. Minimum 2 Ethernet ports are required to run a firewall, one for WAN and one for LAN. But our licensing doesn't restrict you to have number of LAN ports. You can have 20 Ethernet ports. You can use 10 WAN or internet lines. We can have 5 local area networks, depends on individual blocks or buildings. Maybe another 5 you can have it for your servers, VMs for separate networking. And as I told you before, we support virtualizations as well. We have VMware. We support Workstation, Player, Fusion in Mac, EXSI, and Hyper-V version 5 or 6 and above. Again, the hardware requirement is similar. In a VMware, recommended 2 gigahertz of processors. and the rest is going to be the same. In Microsoft environment, we work on a Hyper-V. We starts with the 2008 R2, 2012, 2016, 2019. I didn't add it. If SMEs, if they don't have servers, if they have Windows 10 or Windows 7, this can also be deployed on Windows 7 and Windows 10, provided Hyper-V enabled with 64-bit capabilities. Great. Hardware deployment, software deployment, we discussed, talked about self-provisioning and licensing part. We required basic internet connectivity, modem, router, for connecting the firewall. I hope you all aware of everything. The good part is Kerio Control itself a router. You don't need a lease line, maybe another brand router for just for routing. You have a lease line, directly connect the lease line to a firewall, you can deploy it. Now, last we go on to the licensing overview, how the licensing works. Kerio can be licensed in both subscription model as well as perpetual license model. In perpetual license model, minimum number of users is going to be 5 users. You can keep adding additional 5 users in increment anytime whenever you required it. And every product normally comes with a renewable every in next 12 months. And in terms of hardware, Kerio hardware comes with unlimited user licensing. That's the advantage of pushing hardwares. And Kerio only restrict by number of devices that you can connect. It doesn't restrict in terms of number of concurrent connectivity, bandwidth, in terms of VPN, VPN tunnels, VPN clients. No, it's not going to do that. And now when I'm talking about a licensing of number of devices and users, don't get confused with it. For example, if you have 5 users of Kerio Control, you can manage up to 25 devices concurrently into your network. In other words, if your organization into the network, but not all the 100 users are going to access internet, but it requires a protection, then you required only 20 user licenses or maybe 15 user licenses good enough to manage all the 100 devices on your network. So in simple words, licensing works in concurrency, a number of devices. Any number of devices can be binded to one user. In hardware appliance editions, we do not have any user limitations. It comes with unlimited users. That's what I've talked about, NG100, NG300, NG500. So again, there is a constraints in Indian market of the cost. So NG100 comes with one model, which comes with only unlimited user licenses. NG300 comes with 2 models, either with 25 user licenses or unlimited user licenses. 25 user licenses means it can support up to 125 devices multiplied by 5. NG500 comes with the same hardware but 3 different settings. 50 users, which can support up to 250 concurrent devices. 100 users can support 500 concurrent devices. Unlimited user license support, unlimited concurrent devices. That's how the hardware licensing works. This is a quick, end of my presentation about an overview. And if you all, maybe in another 2 minutes, I'm going to start actual installation of the product, how it works. Meanwhile, I think Princey Upadhyay is there online with me. You can post any questions. She maybe reply back to you. If you could allow me 2 minutes, I'll connect with my sandbox environment where I can do the installations. Thank you. Be online, please. Once the IS is started, it's going to ask for a language, English. Just a moment. A complete firewall installation will take less than 5 minutes. And it's asking for license agreement. I applied my license and do the installation. At this moment, it is doing a partitioning of the product, maybe the hard disk. I recommend you to use SSDs so that you can get a better performance rather normal hard disks. Installation is completed and I am rebooting it. The time takes to start depends on the size of your hard disk. That's it. My Kerio Control firewall is up and ready. This can be deployed or configured by using a Kerio Cloud, which is my.kerio.com, by using the join ID. Or if you are inside your local network, you have default IP addresses are deployed over here 10.10.10.1. If you are not having DHCP in your network environment, and this firewall by defaultly set a DHCP environment and you can connect to the firewall. Just a moment, I'm going to show you how it's going to get connected. Once you enter it, it doesn't have any passwords to set with because the initial configurations needs to be set. You can see at this moment I have 4 different Ethernet interfaces, WAN and other LAN interfaces. We have VLANs also. Every interface can have 254 VLAN IDs can be generated individually. And this you can configure it by using your local IP, public IP, whatever you want based on your own preferences. By defaultly, it's set up like 10, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 1, and the increment of 1. And if you'd like to enable a remote administration, you can enable it directly from here. And other than these, you have only 3 options. One is shut down the firewall or restart the firewall and factory reset. In console, I don't have any other settings because Kerio Control is managed completely on web interface. Right. Give me a moment and I'll just show you the web interface. Now, once uh, install the firewall, what happens is you're going to access it through web interface. The first time when you open, it's going to ask me the questions, a small wizard like you need to you need to give the WAN interfaces and LAN interfaces. Next, agree to the license agreement, and it by defaultly is going to check. Sorry, agree to the license agreement, and it's going to check the time zones and the internet access. And you need to set up a license. We have both options. You have a commercial license key, you can add it, or you can go for a trial, 30 days by defaultly available. And if you have a trial ID, you can go ahead or you can ask your account managers. They can able to share you the trial IDs. At this moment, I am activating this with the unregistered trial. I'm going next. It's asking you to set up a password. I'm setting up a password. And the initial stage itself, it'll ask you 3 questions. Again, you want to connect this to my cloud. If you want, you can enable it. If you want to receive alerts about the basic alert system alerts in the project, you can specify your email addresses. Specifying email addresses require an SMTP connection. If you are using MyKerio, it automatically uses MyKerio's SMTP connection to send alerts. Otherwise, you have to specify SMTP credentials. That's it. My firewall is ready. I'm going to log in, admin, and the password. I can log into the firewall without any disturbances. The time you log in, it's going to show me about the dashboard of the product, the licensing, products, system configurations, the amount of RAM and CPU usage, what kind of interfaces that we have, where we have configurations. Now, Kerio Control basically divides the whole operations into 4 different parts. configuration, status, logs, and the statistics. The left hand side, you can see that is a configuration, status, logs, and statistics. Configuration is pretty easy. One is you require a number of interfaces. You want to set it's a single line or a multiple line with the failover or a load balancing that you can specify. And each ports can be configured based on your own speeds and the VLANs if required. And either of these interfaces can be grouped into maybe it's a VPN or it could be a trusted or a local interfaces or a WAN interfaces. If you put this in other interfaces also, you can configure them to work within your network. For example, you talk about DMZ zones, we can put all the traffic in DMZ zones. Now, moving on to traffic rules, basic rules, you all use the firewalls. We have a source, destination. We can use both IPv4 and IPv6, whether you want to allow the traffic or you want to deny the traffic, that we can do it here. For example, if you want to allow, you want to translate it, you can specify the NATing. NATing is default recommended as categorized based on your interface configurations like failover or a load balancing, uh, according to the better compatibility or better performance of the traffic routes. And if you think like, no, I want to bind the traffic to a specific interface, we can do that as well. If you bind it to, for example, WAN, if that particular line goes down, then you need to have an alternative way to route the traffic. You can use any available alternative routes as well. And if you want to have, instead of NATing, if you need to have a port mapping, we can port map it again with IPv4 as well as IPv6. And if necessary, you can translate ports as well. The good part is, anything when you allow, you can monitor the traffic bandwidth usage by enabling the traffic chart individually if you want. Otherwise, individual packets or individual connections, even if you want to mark this as a certain DSCP values, you can mark it so that you can use it on the bandwidth management. Now, these traffic rules can be allowed in a specific time ranges. You can specify certain time ranges, maybe a lunch time or maybe any time suits to you. This particular rule is valid only on those time frames. By defaultly, the rule works in like left to right, top to bottom. The connections would be checked for allowing one by one. If any one traffic the connection is passed through, the line will move on. Now, coming back to the IDS and IPS, we have nothing to do in this. It takes the updates. It basically updates. You can configure this to get updated every 1 hour to minimum. Okay, let me do one thing. This is the firewall which I installed it right now. So that's what you're seeing it. I do not see any number of connections and everything. Let me log into a live firewalls to explain how that is going to look like. What you see right now is basically a NG500 deployed at one of my location. It has 6 interfaces. Right now we are using 2 interfaces there on the left hand side. And you have two internets. Just a moment. Yes. This is basically NG500 as a firewall appliances. You can see there are 3 different internet interfaces which we deployed as a WAN load balancing. And one we have Tata SIP, because normally people says IP PBX cannot be put behind firewalls. But right now what we did is we put the IPPBX behind the firewall with the Tata SIP. So that also we have. There are 3 different interfaces. One for voice VLAN we have put. VLAN is generated by using the same interfaces that you can see with VLAN ID 10. And we have LAN switches, other line is disconnected. And VPN is also enabled on Kerio to Kerio, Kerio VPN. Now, let's quickly move on to the IDS and IPS that we were discussing. Now, IDS, IPS, normally this is the licensed product, so you can see all the features deployed for you. Here you can see you can add up to 1 hour of getting updates. Your IDS hostile compromise hosts, including Onion Network or Tor exit nodes. Being a partner, most of the time your customers are asking you like, can I block usurf? Can I block some other proxies inside my network? Yes, you can deploy it. You can block it over here. And now when I'm moving on to the security settings, here we can able to specify the individual MAC addresses. And based on the MAC addresses, we can able to restrict them on our individual networks. That's possible. We have connection limits. The connection limits are basically used to limit a number of concurrent connections generated from one specific IP addresses. Let me quickly move on to the blocking of incoming traffics to from other countries. You can specify all the countries except India if required, and we can permanently block all the IP addresses or systems which is not assigned or by the firewall, because sometimes end users use their own manual IP addresses that stops us to track who's using what IP addresses. Even though if you uh, put that on a domain environment, restricting the end user to not to use uh, DHCP, it is possible. People normally do that. So we can block all the IP addresses which are not assigned by Kerio. And talk about the bandwidth management. You can quickly create a bandwidth management by specifying the type of bandwidth or by category of applications. For example, if you want to choose any specific web categories, and for that particular web categories, for example, streaming audio or a video can have a minimum bandwidth or a maximum bandwidth both on upload or download that can be given. Now, most of the time what happens is when a bandwidth is assigned, we need to decide this type of traffic if it moves on which interface. Technically, enterprises normally have a high cost bandwidth, maybe a lease line which is used for enterprise applications, maybe another low cost internet line or a broadband which is used to browsing internet. Now the question is where and how that you're going to allow the interfaces. Now you have individually, you can specify if this particular traffic goes on my ILL, then it should have this bandwidth. If it goes on a broadband, I can have a different bandwidth, and that too on a valid specific time. That helps me to manage my quality of services for my applications or my end users. Now, moving on to the bandwidth management, it's not only about the type or category of application that you use it. You remember that we created a traffic rules on the firewall. You can choose any of the traffic rules and you can say, okay, VPN services can have only certain bandwidth. And then sometimes we say, oh, no, I don't want the traffic rule. I can choose a specific protocol. For example, if the one user is using HTTPS, she will get 10 Mbps. But if he is using email, SMTP, or a POP, IMAP, or a EWS, they can have maybe 50 Mbps. But the same user, if he's trying to use video on a YouTube, they will get only 512 kbps. So like that, for every protocol, every type of content, or maybe individual protocol based sizes, we can specify a bandwidth. Now, apart from this, having said that, If you want to specifically give a specific individual IP address and you want to limit a bandwidth, that is also possible. If the firewall is integrated with your Active Directory, and then that such situations, what happens is you can specify a usernames of your Active Directories can be picked up. You can choose any one particular user and you can give a bandwidth to them. This is how the Kerio bandwidth management works. Now, quickly moving on to content filter, and it's going to happen exactly the same way. Any content, by defaultly all the content are allowed, only a specific content we can block it. This can also be done reversely also. You block everything, you allow only a specific type of content, or maybe to a specific user, maybe by specifying the usernames or IP addresses or the guest interfaces. That is possible. Now, we do have application awareness, which means it's not only going to talk about content or IP address or the source. It can able to track applications. For example, if the traffic goes to Skype, the Kerio Control can able to analyze this is Skype traffic, and there also it can able to analyze it's a Skype chat or a Skype video call or audio call or a Skype file transfer individually. And once that awareness happens, then you can able to block even individual services of individual applications. And we do have HTTPS decryption by using your own certificate. Yes, it is illegal. Illegal in the sense, as long as it is not communicated to the end user, you can decrypt HTTPS traffic, what is used inside your organizations, used by your own employees. And we do have a safe web. We can enforce safe web supported by search engines like Google, YouTube, Bing, Yandex. And so that only quality content is delivered to end users. The old methodologies, we have proxy servers. We do have both forward proxy as well as reverse proxy. Reverse proxy is used to deliver a domain-based services to your servers running in a DMZ or inside your network. We have antiviruses. We work with Bitdefender at this moment, which supports scans all the HTTP and FTP traffics. A DHCP server is good enough to run a DHCP assignment, but it's a full-fledged DHCP server with all the options, starting from time offset to DNS to IMAP POP configuration to TFTP, web server configurations and everything. You can configure it. Now, DHCP server can be configured for each LAN interfaces differently as it requires. Both IPv6 and v4. We have a routing table which supports both the things. And quickly, before getting into much on the configurations, let's move on the status, because I'm already seeing we are already 10 minutes late. Here you can see like live how many systems are connected into my network, what are the IP addresses, and what time they have connected, what are the current bandwidth it is used right now, and most importantly, how many connections are generated by these individual PCs that you can see. Now, in a good scenario, if you want to see what kind of bandwidth is consumed by who, that also you can see. And you can also understand the activity of that particular host, maybe the connections or the histogram, what kind of bandwidth is consumed over a period of 2 hours to 1 month. That is also possible. Now, moving on to active connections, this is going to show you the exactly a lot of connections available across the network. You can see the source and destination countries as well. And if it's a load balancing, you'll also see which connection goes through which interfaces. And you have the source port, you have destination port, and you do have what kind of applications that particular connections is utilizing. That you can see it over here: Jabber, VPN, even LinkedIn is used by someone, and Bing is used, CloudFront is used. So like this what we call application awareness. Now, moving on to the system, VPN client that you can see. There is Mr. Prakash is connected right now. You can see using a Kerio VPN. Now it's going to pick up client IP address as well as how long this gentleman is connected to my network. The good part is every VPN client can have a two-factor authentication. Once the two-factor authentication is authenticated, then only the packets are moved from the firewall, maybe from network to the client location. Otherwise, no. And talking about user statistics, we'll have the data used by individual users. Traffic charts is going to give you an overview of what kind of traffic is consumed in over a period of a month. Maybe if you enable traffic chart for individual protocols also, that we can able to see. Alert messages, which is like, for example, if VPN tunnel goes down or maybe individual line goes down, WAN link changes, comes online, offline, we get all the alerts. It's visible here. The same can be sent across to the end users by email. The system health is going to display you the hardware usage of the firewall. Right now, if you notice, there are 100 systems, around 100 systems are connected, 62 are concurrently using right now. If you see, the CPU usage is less than 5%, not even 5%, 1%, and 2 GB of RAM is utilized. And I have only 8 GB of logs, which is logged till at this moment. When talking about logs, all the traffics are generated or logged by using HTTP and HTTPS in terms of any security logs like viruses, in terms of attacks, in terms of IDS traffics that also can be blocked and logged over here. Now, for example, for alert purposes, if you think like, for example, you have a keyword like drop shield block, which has happened. If you want an email alert for specific kind of a log, that can also be generated. And last but not least, there's the statistics. Statistics is again a good part of it, which is going to help us in getting the printable reports of the firewall. Maybe for every individual users. Let me show you a specific reports. Give me a moment. I'm logging in with my own admin account. Now, this can able to give you a statistics based on over a period of 30 days or 5 years or whatever the time period you want. It can give you a summary. Again, there's a printable report. Or you can have a users by individual traffic. If the user is logged in, it won't show it. Sites, popularly visited sites. You have a web categories used by your network. Even it can able to analyze the applications. What applications people used it, those applications, who used it much, that you can see. And technically, if you want to know a individual log of users, that also can be generated. Not logged in user. If I choose any user, if I choose an activity for specific date today, how long they have connected, when they have connected, and what time. For example, if they have downloaded something, those links, let me show you. On the left hand side, you can see today they have downloaded these applications, the cap files, exe files, and all these things, all the links that you can get it from where they downloaded it. If they made a remote access, you can see the remote access data from where to where they have connected, when they have connected with by using which line. And these data can be like a printable report. You can just print it, maybe in a PDF or an Excel sheet, or even if you want to export it to images, that you can do it. At this moment, I would like to conclude this Kerio Control as firewall, maybe installation and configurations. I leave it on you. Maybe if you can help me to give your comments, maybe questions if you have any, you can put it on the chat box so that I'll try to address it in next 10 minutes immediately. And the meanwhile, I have a certain poll. I have enabled a poll. Maybe if a panelist can able to vote on this, maybe I can understand better your requirements. I've started a poll. I would request if all the participants, if you could able to answer it, that would be great. that helps me in terms of focusing, maybe delivering a tailor-made, customized solutions for you. Great, thank you for your votes. I'll leave that polls there on the left-hand side. I'm closing the poll in next 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. End it. Thank you. I'm seeing there are questions coming in from all the participants. Had audio problems. Can you provide some link to recording of these sessions? Yes, this session would be a link would be provided to each and every one of you. You can download and can have it. One more gentleman has a question like, does Kerio Control supports user-based authentication for internet access? Yes, if required, it can be configured to have a user-based authentication, as well as if the end user doesn't require user-based authentication, we can have a IP-based configurations as well. Another gentleman has a question as, does it also supports wireless controller with a hotspot support facility? No, this is a firewall. This is not a hotspot. But yes, as we already have a wireless access point enabled, this can be used as guest wireless access, but it is not comes with hotspot controller. I can see another question which says, can I install it on Microsoft Hyper-V? Yes, it is possible. You can use it on Windows 7, Windows 10, or starting from Windows 2008 R2 till 2019, possible. Does it also supports IKE v2? Yes, it supports IKE v2 for your IPsec VPN tunnels to be used with other appliances. Yeah, one more question is, can I reduce the bandwidth for a specific user? Yes, we can control bandwidth for individual IP addresses or group of IP addresses, as well as we can deploy it on, we can control the uh, bandwidth for individual users or group of users, which can be created from Kerio Control itself or by connecting it to Active Directory. No, Kerio Control doesn't support SD-WAN as an option right now, but yes, it can have all the other capabilities. For example, VPN load balancing, which is available. Bandwidth shaping is not available with the Kerio Control at this moment. We have other product line for it, Exenda, where we have SD-WAN capabilities are coming into this. We do not have SD-WAN in Kerio Control. I think there are other questions. I would like to take that on one-to-one basis. Maybe I'll be in touch with you, each one of you, with another specific questions which is related to individual capabilities. And thank you for having me as here. Yes, I have another question. Kerio Control is available on any marketplace like Azure or AWS. Uh, No, not at this moment. We are working on it. Yes, soon in the first quarter of 2000, second quarter of 2019. Yes, it will be available in Azure and AWS. Great. Thank you so much. And thanks for joining me today. Uh, I think your account managers will be in touch with you for any feedbacks that if you have. I'm just sharing my email address over there with all panelists and attendees. All you can able to send me your feedbacks with us so that it helps us to improve the other webinars which you want to conduct every day. And thank you so much. Bye bye.